Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Unnamed Bracketology podcast. I'm going to take off my glasses. My name is Kerry Miller, joined as always and in person for a change by my good buddy, Graham Dorn, my bud guddy. Graham, it was a crazy weekend. We're going to recap the hoops. Do you have any initial thoughts that you would like to share as our resident Kansas fan?
I didn't know I was getting that one, but yeah, I think they're still on track to make the tournament, but it's very similar to what we talked about in that last Big 12 episode, which is there's going to be a lot of 50-50 games in the Big 12. And if you win them, all of a sudden that resume is going to look a lot better. You lose them, it's going to look a lot worse. And I think what I'm seeing from them is they're likely to trend down towards that 6 or 7 range as opposed to maybe getting into that 2 or 3 range. I just think this was a week where they really needed to win both the TCU and West Virginia games to have a chance of getting up into that higher protected seed range. And I think they're more likely to fall down to like an 8-9 game than they are to now get like a 2 seed. So
Yeah.
I think it's a very, I don't want to say dangerous territory for them, but their path is going to get a lot harder, I think.
I definitely don't feel like they're in the Houston BYU tier anymore, at any rate. Got a nice little notepad here where we're going to chat about, but we'll go over the 10, not the biggest games, but kind of the 10 of the most important developments of the weekend. And that will include Friday, starting out right at the top at number 10 with Miami, Ohio, staying undefeated with a road win over Toledo. I think it was Michael Gross on Twitter was asking me, like, is there a chance that the Red Hawks could get an at-large bid? Do you think there is any case for them? I think they only played three games outside of Quad Four prior to Friday night. Like, it's so hard for a MAC team to get in regardless, but especially one that played nobody.
Yeah, I think that playing such an incredibly weak non-conference schedule really hurts because there's not going to be a lot of sympathy from the committee. That is, I truly believe that matters, not having that sympathy. But with that in mind, they've done a really good job of converting their chances. So I've been looking at this for a while, thinking if Miami loses one regular season game and loses in the conference tournament, I think they're probably going to get in. If they lose 2 games in the regular season, I don't think it's going to happen. I just think if you're a 2-loss team, one of those being in the conference tournament, and the MAC traditionally plays later in the conference tournament week, so
You
that
would know
could
that. I don't know.
that could come to their advantage if that is maybe happening a little bit later in selection process, because maybe they're looking at Miami as a one-loss team as they're considering whether to
That's
put them
true.
in the field.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's similar to, I don't remember what year it was, but Murray State when they went like 31-2, and Stephen F. Austin has had some years where they only had one or two losses, but didn't beat anybody, and that one loss was a quad four loss. Like that's the problem is they don't play anybody the rest of the way. They already beat Akron. They don't play them again. I don't think they play Toledo again. I don't think they play Bowling Green again. So
They do
they,
travel to Kent State.
yeah,
That would be a quality win as well. And it's all relative, right?
yeah,
Like these are quality wins for the schedule they've played. I just what I ultimately think is their resume metrics. If they can lose one game in the regular season, the resume metrics will be so high headed into the conference tournament. I think it will probably be just enough. But if the committee leaves them out as a 2-loss team after the conference tournament, honestly, they have nobody to blame but themselves without out of conference strength of schedule. They just had to play somebody. And I think that would have gotten them a lot of sympathy in the room.
yeah. Their best win was at Wright State. That's not great. 363rd ranked non-conference strength of schedule. Probably not going to cut it. We've seen plenty of like ACC teams not get in because of that. Number nine, our neck of the woods, George Mason, still a one-loss team with a quality win over VCU. I think they picked up two of their best wins of the season in the last couple of days. Are they now? Well, I guess technically they are the A10 auto bid if you're going by just the standings. But if you didn't have that, would they be in your field now as an at-large?
Yeah, barely. I,
Yeah.
I have George Mason holding on to an 11 seed, but I'm back into that line. So, yeah, I think I'd look at George Mason and what they've done so far. I think it is enough to be in the field. Only losses at Virginia Tech, quality win over VCU again this week, adding on to that victory they had over FAU, which is barely hanging on at quad two at this point.
Barely.
Yeah,
You
like as
you
low
win
as you can
100.
go. But when I think George Mason tells that very similar story to Miami, which is if you win enough, it is just that difficult to win that often. And I think George Mason's like Miami University on steroids, right? Like it is a tougher strength of schedule all the way around. So I think they will get a little bit of leniency
Yeah,
compared to what Miami would have. A big key game is they've got St. Louis at home. If they can get St. Louis at home, that'll change their profile dramatically.
yeah. Similar to Miami, Ohio, 349 non-conference strength of schedule. So, but if they will, as to your point, they'll get more games coming their way in conference play. Number 8 on the list was Kansas's loss to West Virginia. We already talked about that. It doesn't do anything for the Mountaineers. They're not getting in unless some kind of absolute miracle happens in the next 2 months. Kansas is still looking good for like a 5 or 6. Number 7 on my list, Alabama falters at home against Texas. Now, polar opposite situation where it's a team that played about as good of a non-conference schedule as you're going to get, to the point where even losing at home to what might be one of the 3 worst teams in the SEC, it's like, eh, a mulligan almost.
Yeah, I was really surprised when I was putting together my seed list this morning, and I kept Alabama as my top 4 seed. I did not see that coming at all.
Yeah,
My gut told me they're going to drop to the back end of the 4 line, if not a 5 seed. And then when I was putting everybody's resumes together, it's still very good. Illinois neutral court, and we all know that was not even really a neutral court for Alabama. That's a great win. You go play St. John's on the road out of conference, like you said. Clemson wins looking better and better. Kentucky, another quality win. I think, I mean, relative quality there. But I think when you look at their overall profile, you reward them for playing a tough strength of schedule.
yeah,
You reward them for having really top end wins. So all things considered, I don't think it's a strong 4 seed profile. I
yeah,
think they're just at the top of the 4 line for me, only because of what's going on around them with other teams not taking advantage of opportunities. That said, I don't think they're going to be driving too far anytime soon. And not really bad losses. Like we talked about with Vanderbilt, they were competitive against Vanderbilt. That wasn't a bad
yeah,
loss. The Texas loss is the one that really was questionable. But I don't really blame them for losing at Vanderbilt. It's really only the Texas game that they get faulted on.
yeah. And even that doesn't hurt them too much. What is this? Number 6 on the list, game just ended like a few minutes ago. Ohio State lost at Washington. Again, not a terrible loss. We were kind of hoping they would go out to the Pacific Northwest and pick up that sweep. They won by, I think, 10 at Oregon the other night. I mean, Washington's one of those tough teams, right? They're close to the bubble. Wins over them doesn't feel like a quality win, but losses to them doesn't feel that bad either. It's kind of that weird catch-22 situation. But I was going to have, if Ohio State won, they were going to be like my third or fourth to last team in. Now they're going to be one of my first couple of teams out. Where are you at on the Buckeyes now? We'll get to the first 4 and last 4 in a little bit, but
They're going to be my last team still staying in the bracket.
okay.
And really more so, it's just looking for other potential options and not really seeing anybody that has a tournament worthy profile. At least with Ohio State, I can say they've got a quality road win against Northwestern. Is Northwestern great? No, but we just talked about West Virginia. West Virginia's not there. At least they beat West Virginia. Sometimes to put together a tournament worthy profile, it's not about getting the best wins. It's about beating the Notre Dames and the Oregons and the Northwesterns and the West Virginias and just making sure somebody else doesn't have a better profile than you. And that's a lot of what I think Ohio State has done is just make the other profiles around them worse and boost theirs up a little bit.
Yeah, I think to move Ohio State out, I ended up sliding NC State in, and that's a team that has not beaten a quad one opponent. So to your point, there's not much there on the bubble that we're looking at. And we were texting yesterday that like that was a great day for the mid majors because now San Diego State's looking pretty close, New Mexico's looking pretty strong, Mason's looking good. So yeah, just another middling major that took a loss. Number 5. What did I write here? Oh, Illinois surviving at Iowa. Kind of a two-way street there, right? For Illinois, they stay in that running for a 3-4 seed. Iowa now, though, I think they're down in like the 10 or 11 seed range. Just never really had much uh, girth in that schedule. That wasn't the word of the day. What was it? Quark. Can I throw Quark into conversation somehow? But no, I think Iowa now has a lot of work ahead of them, and Illinois at least, and we talked about that in the Big Ten one, that they had so many of their marquee games were going to be on the road, and here they at least got one of those wins at Iowa. How do you view both of those teams now?
I think Illinois was already a team, and Made for March Online, he was mentioning that he thought Illinois was being slept on as a one seed contender before that game, and I agree. I think are they one seed now? No. Could they get there? Yeah, I think they could get there. They've got a pretty good basis to start from. One at Iowa, one at Ohio State, beat Texas Tech, Tennessee neutral, Missouri neutral, one at Penn State. We saw how much Michigan struggled there. Like there's actually a pretty good group of wins already for Illinois. And more than that, they're probably just a pretty good team. Actually, Illinois did something very similar last year, started a little bit slower, picked it up. So I think Illinois is likely to finish as a top three seed. At Iowa, still a little bit of breathing room, but if they don't win either of their next two games, all of a sudden they're going to have a big hole to dig in quads one and two. Just winning enough games against top teams is important. Something UNC, to their credit last year, they didn't get the quad one wins, but they loaded up on quad two wins. Iowa needs to pick up quality wins wherever they can get them.
Or they need to get their AD as the selection committee chairman. That's how you make up for not having quad one wins. You sound like you need a drink. If you want to
I
go get a
was
drink,
just thinking the
I'm
same
gonna I'm
thing.
gonna vamp on our number four game while you go get a drink. And it was Nebraska winning at Indiana, remaining undefeated, one of five remaining undefeateds left in the country. But to get that win at Assembly Hall was just, I mean, massive for them. I think they've just been repeatedly proving time and again over the last couple of weeks just how good they actually are. They've been able to stay undefeated, but now they're actually picking up the quality wins, winning at Illinois, beating Michigan State at home. Now they got that win at Indiana, they won at Ohio State. I mean, they've picked up three of their four best wins in the last just 2 weeks. And pretty soon we're going to be talking about the one seeds, and they are absolutely in the conversation there for both of us. And not just because they're undefeated, they now have five quad one wins, four quad one A wins, nine total wins against the top two quads, which is the case for all the remaining undefeated teams in power conference play. But honestly, for me, it's more so this result was Indiana losing. Another missed opportunity for the Hoosiers. They slip out of my field at this point. I had them just barely in heading into the weekend. I don't know how you feel about the Hoosiers now, but I feel like they've blown too many opportunities and we're still waiting on them to actually get a quality win.
Yeah, when I look at Indiana, I think they're in more trouble than Iowa when I compare those two
Yeah.
teams. I think Indiana has had some opportunities against teams that you would expect for them to get more wins against. Whereas at least with Iowa, I look at it and I think, you know what, maybe they've lost some more games against teams that I would expect them to lose to. But I look at Indiana, they lost at Minnesota.
Yeah.
They played Louisville neutral, lost that. Nebraska, I really was expecting to be a victory.
Yeah.
Nebraska's a good team, obviously a very good team, but I really did think Indiana was going to get that one. They've got nothing, literally not a single win over a top 64 team in the country. Like if we're talking about the tournament should have never been expanded before 64 teams, look what they're dealing with. They haven't beat a single one. So I think Indiana's in some real trouble at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I still have them close just because there aren't any other candidates.
I mean,
Yeah, go
one
ahead.
thing to consider here, at least from my opinion, Kansas State, a lot of people thought they're going to be a tournament contender. They're not going to be. So that doesn't look very good. Marquette, especially, looked like they could be like an 8 or 9 seed before the year. They're not going to be in the tournament. So Indiana got nothing in its non conference compared to what it expected.
Yeah, no, I mean nothing whatsoever. Number three on the list, St. John's goes on the road and Molly Wops Creighton. Is that Molly Wops? Molly Womps? I don't know. Uh, Huge win for them. Right after on the heels of a road win over Butler. That was a sweep that I think the Johnnies had to have. 1 week ago, they were out of my field. Now I have them back as like I think they're an 8 seed now for me, which speaks volumes to how little meat there is on the bone for teams in that 8-9 seed range right now. That two wins over teams not currently in the field can help you vault 4 seed lines, but the Red Storm needed that. They already had the predictive metrics for sure, but they did not have the quality wins at all. And yeah, like Butler and Creighton not in the field. I don't think anybody could reasonably argue that they are in right now, but those are Washington, Northwestern, those are those caliber type of wins that you need to get, and they did so convincingly. I think I saw you have the Johnnies up to like a 8 seed now too,
Yeah, I
right?
have them as an 8. And I think, kind of importantly, very similar to Indiana, when you expect these teams to bounce back because of the predictive metrics, that's kind of factored into your calculus of where they're going to end up. St. John's did what I expected a team of their predictive metrics to do, which is bounce back. Indiana hasn't done that. So that would be the question. Is Indiana going to do that, or are they going to end up being like a Pitt situation from last year where Pitt looked like, yeah, surely they're going to win enough games because they're over here sitting at 22 in the net at this time of year. Man, I mean, how similar could Iowa or Indiana potentially be there? So I think St. John's is going to get in, and I think they're pretty comfortably in at this point.
Yeah. Similar vein, except it was a home game, but Florida is number 2 on our list. Florida beat the crap out of Tennessee, 91-67, if my eyes work without glasses here. Um, Similar team that was like didn't have the great wins, but the predictive metrics loved them. Now they have a really quality win. I think technically the home win over Georgia was better as far as the net is concerned, but that was their most impressive win of the season. I think now they finally look like that 5 seed we've been wanting them to hang on to all season long, and maybe from here they can really start to make a run because they haven't taken anything close to a terrible loss. That loss to Missouri actually looks okay now that Missouri's probably in the projected field.
Yeah, I think one team that we typically see every year is a team who looks very good, and then you look at their resume metrics and you're like, "Ooh, that's not great." But if you look at their quadrant splits aren't bad, and that's who I think is this team's this year the example of that. Florida, not great resume metrics by any means, but their predictive metrics are very good. And then you look at the way their quads split up. They're 3-4 against quad one, 2-1 against quad two, so they actually are 500 against quads one and two, and they've got a few quad one wins already in their pocket, impressively over Tennessee, like you mentioned. So I think when you add all that up, Florida is a 5 seed for me now, and probably going to trend up from there, would be my guess.
Yeah, they kind of feel like Arizona last year, where it was just for the first month, it's like why cannot they just can't win a close game? Are they bad? And then conference play starts, and all of a sudden they just take off. Hopefully, it works out better for them in the tournament than it did for Arizona. Number one, hands down, Wisconsin goes on the road, upsets Michigan. What happened to the Wolverines? They had won their previous prior to almost losing at Penn State. They had won their previous 10 games by something like 36 points per game, and now all of a sudden they're mortal. Did they just get too high on their own supply? Were they never as good as we thought they were? Are they even a 1 seed anymore? We'll talk about that momentarily. But Wisconsin, though, I think Wisconsin's in the field now out of nowhere. When we had our Big Ten talk on Tuesday, they were like just at the bottom of our spreadsheet. Like, we got to at least mention them, but they haven't beaten anybody. That is the best win. That's probably hands down the best win in the entire season thus far by any team. So I think they vault in. And how far did you drop Michigan?
So, I mean, I guess we could talk about it when we get to the 1 seeds here in a second. We'll transition into it, but moved Wisconsin to the top of my 10 seed list
Yeah.
from out of the bracket. And then I dropped Michigan to fifth overall. And it's not like I think Michigan's the fifth best team in the country. I think they're better than that. But when I look at what Michigan's done, very impressive overall resume, but they lost at home to Wisconsin. And it's all relative, right? If you're let's say you're Georgia and you lose at home to Wisconsin, that's not a bad loss
Yeah.
for Georgia. If you're competing for a 1 seed, that's a bad loss because teams that compete for 1 seeds hardly ever pick up those sorts of losses.
Yep.
Like losing at home to Wisconsin is a 1 seed's equivalent of losing a quad three game, right? Like that just doesn't happen. Like honestly, it's more like a quad four if you're like a Mountain West Bowl team. Like this is like Boise State losing to Hawaii Pacific.
Oh my
You just
God.
don't lose that game.
You can't shit on Wisconsin like that, man.
But that's the equivalent, right? It's just a loss that you cannot take if you're competing for a one seed. You can take it if you're competing for a three or four,
Yeah.
but the one line, you got to be pretty much spotless across the board.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they can get you for that. And I look at Nebraska. Do I think Nebraska's as good as Michigan? No, I don't. But when I look what they did, they went to Indiana. They won quad 1A win. They keep adding wins. They're undefeated. I don't want Michigan as a two seed, but I think there's four teams with better resumes.
Yeah, I mean, there are 9 teams right now, I think, really in the mix for a one seed. I don't think Houston and BYU are quite there, but I have Gonzaga as my top 3 seed, and their only loss was to Michigan. Then you've got Purdue, their only loss was to Iowa State, which is in this conversation. Duke's only loss was a close game to Texas Tech on a neutral. They're probably like a 4 seed. And who am I missing? Connecticut's only loss was to Arizona, and they were shorthanded. So, yeah, of those 9 teams, this is by far the worst of those losses. So, I mean, I don't know if I'd compare it to Hawaii Pacific, but my God. Anyway, one seeds. I copped out, and I told you this. I'm just going with the undefeated teams at this point, not Miami, Ohio. But I have Arizona at 1, Iowa State at 2, Nebraska at 3, and Vanderbilt at 4. They all have at least 4 quad one. I think they all have 5 quad one wins. They all have 9 quad one and quad two wins. The only team in the country with more than 5 quad one wins is Duke. Nobody has more than 9 quad one and quad two wins. I don't think there's any argument for any of those 4 to be outside the top 7. So I'm like, all right, you're undefeated. You get to be the top 4 right now. And then I have Connecticut, Duke, and I dropped Michigan all the way to 7 because of how bad that loss was for them compared to all these other teams. What is your hierarchy right now? I think I saw you have Connecticut at 2,
I
don't
was
you?
gonna say, I feel like you're making me feel bad for Michigan at 5, and now
I,
you're over there at
yeah, the
7. But
5 part is fine. It was the Wisconsin slander that I was. I was kind of
again,
good.
Boise State losing to Hawaii Pacific is what you notice at the bubble. Michigan losing to Wisconsin is what you notice in the one seed discussion. But I think the reason I went Arizona, Yukon, Nebraska, and then ultimately slotting that 4 spot in as Iowa State in that order this really comes down to the quality wins.
Yeah.
Arizona won at UConn. Obviously, I feel very strongly about UConn's resume. Why do I feel so strongly about UConn's resume? Because their only loss isn't just to Arizona. It was shorthanded with Mullins and Reed.
Yep.
If they weren't both out, I'd probably feel a little bit differently about the resume. But when you're this high into the top of the bracket, those are the sorts of details the committee really will discuss at length and get into. So I think UConn, when you look at the road win over Kansas, beating Florida, Illinois, and BYU on neutral courts. Those are 4 elite wins
Yep.
to have on the resume. That's not even counting what did Alabama show us? Beating Texas at home is not that easy. I mean, winning at Providence, that's actually a pretty good win. Is it a great win? No, it's a pretty good win. I look at UConn, I just think they have so many quality wins that I really thought they deserved that one line. Because, like you said, Duke has 7 quad one wins.
Yep.
But I look at the quality of the wins UConn has and understanding the situation with their loss to Arizona, I just thought I looked at Arizona and UConn as basically the same profile, except Arizona just won the game between the two teams. Um, so I have UConn, Nebraska. I think they've just got too many quality wins with no losses that I can't deny them that spot. And ultimately, Iowa State, when you beat Purdue the way they beat Purdue and they're undefeated, I just couldn't possibly not have them on the one line. I felt.
Yeah. I if I hadn't just copped out, I would still have Connecticut. I had Connecticut at 4 overall before Michigan lost. There was no reason for me to drop Connecticut other than I thought it'd be fun to have all the undefeateds up there until they give me a reason to drop them. All right, teams who have moved the most in the past week. Big risers for me: Florida, Clemson. Do you want to talk about Clemson? Because all of a sudden they have 7 quad one and quad two wins. I don't know where that came from.
Not just 7 quad one and quad two wins, but only 2 losses
Yeah.
in quads one and quads two. So I think when you look at Clemson, they're getting to that point where their win percentage in quad one and quad two really is important. Like I mentioned Florida earlier, right? Like you can look past some of their resume metrics if you say, hey, great predictives, and they're 500 against quads one and quads two. I look at the same thing for Clemson. Like, yeah, they have the bad loss to Georgetown, but if you look at what they do in their quality games, it's just such a lopsided result on winning those games. that I moved Clemson up to 18 overall, and I feel pretty good about it, really. They have a winning record, 4-2 in quad one. They're 3-0 in quad two. They have a 3-2 road record. So, like all the key indicators that you tend to look for on a team sheet, they're hitting those. So, just feeling very good about Clemson's profile. I don't think they're in danger of missing the tournament at this point. It would take an absolute disaster, kind of like
Like a Clemson
well, it was like
collapse.
what happened to Marquette last year,
Yeah.
except Marquette started from like the two line.
Yeah.
If Clemson starts from where they're at and has the same sort of collapse, they might miss the field. But it would take that bad of a performance down the stretch to do it.
Yeah. Two other big risers for me, St. John's we already mentioned, then Texas A&M, kind of out of nowhere, kind of very controversially, but they got that road win over Auburn. Got a nice win over LSU to start conference play, and then who they beat on Saturday? Oklahoma. So Texas A&M is one of two undefeated teams in league play in the SEC. The other one obviously is Vanderbilt. I mean, out of nowhere, I have them in. I didn't think they were really that close to the conversation. I mean, they weren't quite as far gone as Wisconsin, but again, just to the state of the bubble, like surprisingly, they've slid all the way up and in for me. A couple teams moving down and out. We already talked about. I mean, Michigan's not out, but I have them as a down team. Iowa, I dropped them like three full seed lines. LSU and Baylor, I both had in a week ago, and now I have them both out and not even all that close. I mean, Baylor didn't take bad losses, but you can't lose at home to Iowa State and Houston and expect to just stay put if you don't have quality wins backing it up.
Yeah, I would say not just out for me. Neither were seriously considered. So, like to the point where I don't know how far out they are because they weren't close enough for me to really even consider them
They're
anywhere.
they're hanging out with Hawaii Pacific for Graham. All right, state of the bubble, and then we'll wrap up. Last four in for me, starting closest to the bubble. So my last team in North Carolina State, then Missouri, then Texas A&M, and then New Mexico. First four out: Kentucky, Indiana, San Diego State, and I do have Baylor that close. But again, that's just I can't even find teams to consider at that point in the bracket. I guess Ohio State should be there instead of Baylor. I forgot to write in Ohio State, so they would be my fourth team out. What's the state of your bubble? Pull it up on your tweet.
There's actually some head-to-heads that factor in here because I would not have ranked them this exact way if not for it. Stanford is the top of my 11 line because they won at Virginia Tech, who's next, and Virginia Tech beat George Mason, who's right after that. So George Mason not one of the last ones in
Sure.
because of the automatic bid, but then Miami, Ohio after them, followed by New Mexico, and now Ohio State. Ohio State was the top of that 11 line for me. Not that they dropped to the bottom. So the Lobos, I think, actually, if you look at their profile, kind of sneaking by a little bit and haven't made a lot of noise,
Yeah.
but it's a pretty impressive profile. And the first four out for me: Indiana, Missouri, Kentucky, Arizona State. So a much more attractive sounding first four out than last four in when you think of it
The
that way.
NIT one seeds are
Yeah, I
there.
mean, if these teams are headed to the crown in the NIT, they'd be happy to have them.
You don't want to watch New Mexico against Virginia Tech? Come on, man. All right, that'll do it for today, and we'll be back with tomorrow's Monday ACC. We'll go back into our quick hitters, but until next time, take care.